So now we're getting into non-Western. In the future, I'll be doing a more extensive non-Western series, but this is specifically for a World of the Arts course. And when we're dealing with non-Western, there's a number of problems that we need to deal with. First of all, we're going to be dealing, and this happens in World of the Arts, it happens in a non-Western class, etc. We're spending very little time on 90% of the world, really everything that isn't Europe and the United States. Also, most of you have a very minimal foundation, so when you come into most arts courses, you can recognize certain pieces. You know the Mona Lisa, you know the David, etc. But you probably have fairly minimal knowledge of the Taj Mahal, of Islam, of Chinese history. Whereas I can talk about things like the Reformation, and you're going to have some idea that pops up in your head when I mention that. So it does cause some problems. We also have vast cultural differences. I can't rely on the fact that the cultural information that I gave you 3 chapters ago still applies because we're still in Europe or we're still in the United States. We also have the issue of hybridization. The West has moved and throughout history colonized most of the rest of the world at some point. And this results in what's called hybridization. So the culture is partially that original indigenous culture, and partially it's going to take on aspects of Western life. For example, today, no matter where you go in the world, you're probably going to find blue jeans or a Green Bay Packers t-shirt. You might find it in Africa, you might find it in Asia, but you're probably going to find it somewhere if you really look hard enough. That's an example of hybridization. So these problems come together to make non-Western a really tricky subject to deal with. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time dealing with cultural issues so that you understand why these pieces are being created. I'm going to try and avoid making any assumptions about your knowledge level moving into this. Now, in terms of where we're starting, we're actually starting with Asia. More specifically, we're starting with Southeast Asia. And this is a massively diverse area in terms of language, in terms of culture. We also have massively ancient societies that are developing. And overall, we're looking at India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Bangladesh, Indonesia, a massive area, really sort of this entire area, most of Asia that isn't China and Japan. And you notice I didn't say Korea. That's because Korea kind of bounces in terms of being a colony, either a colony of China, or effectively a colony of China, or a colony of Japan. We're going to start, however, with India and Pakistan, which should, for most of history, be understood as one grouping. The separation between India and Pakistan happens following World War II when the British pull out. They push the Muslim population towards Pakistan and try and push the Hindu population down into India, keeping them separate. Now, we know this hasn't worked as well as the British would have hoped at the time, but it does remind us that this is really one cultural region when we deal with them in a historical sense.